Please join me in welcoming the true pioneer of TPM roles, Jenny Truong. With over 25 years building products at Meta, Salesforce, and Oracle, she literally established the TPM role at Meta and scaled it globally across 14 incredible years. She's led teams that shape products we use every day, from Facebook and Marketplace to ads and newsfeed. Jenny is a sought-after speaker at Grace Hopper, Women in Product, and events worldwide. And today, she's here to share her insights with us. Please give a huge TPM Basecamp welcome to Jenny Truong.
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Let me just switch this.
All right. Thank you so much for the intro, Snehal. Well, welcome today. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for having me as well. So a bit about myself. Snehal introduced a lot of me already, so I'm going to just dive into some of the topics once we get started. So first off, a little bit about my journey. So Snehal mentioned that I had worked at Meta. Before Meta, I worked at Salesforce, I worked at Oracle, and another company called Siebel Systems. I've been in tech for a couple of decades, so I'm going to age myself. And I worked on building products and technology until I joined Meta. I was at Meta for 14 years. I started off there as an IC, building out enterprise products and solutions, and then over time moved into a TPM leadership role. And so during that time as an IC, we were sorting out what TPM was. Arvind knows. We had no idea what that world was like back in the day, and I think we've sorted it out, and I'm really grateful for having this sort of community to do that with as well. In addition to my time at Meta, outside of building products, as Snehal mentioned, I also worked on building out the TPM function globally. We understand the value and the leverage of TPMs and the need of the role. And so Meta had this opportunity to see the function as a strong way to scale products and teams. And so I spent time with team members, including Arvind and others, building out the role globally. In addition, I also built the Facebook product suites. I built out a TPM team in the Facebook app, and then we worked on building products and innovating in Facebook as well. And so currently, I'm no longer at Meta. I was there for a long time, and so I decided to take a break, which then required some planning as well. So I'm currently on a sabbatical. I have one son, one child, and he's heading off to college in a couple of years. He's a junior now, so I thought I might immediately become an empty nester very quickly, and so I decided to take that break and spend more time with him, probably more than he wants with me. So that's what I'm currently doing. And I'm also, I wanted to come here to talk about embracing change today. I'm really reflecting. A lot of my career has been about seeing a lot of change and thinking about how I'm going to move forward with a lot of change. And as Josie mentioned, we are in a time of change as well. And so I'm not here to talk about being an expert in it, but how I've survived and thrived through the years with change. So with that, why talk about change? Like, why this topic? Why now? I think Josie alluded to it a bit. So when Josie, as you know, one of the co-founders of TPM Events, asked me, hey, can you come speak at this TPM Basecamp, which I will say was very different from what I had experienced before, having been to the TPM Summit in the past. And when she asked me, what do you want to talk about? And we sort of solutioned on all kinds of things, right? We definitely could talk about TPM role clarity. What does it mean? How do we evolve it? I mean, sort of, a thing we often talk about. We would probably talk about some additional skills. What skills can we acquire? What do you want to learn now? I think that's also a really meaningful topic. The other thing we can definitely talk about, which Malvika mentioned, is how do we leverage AI in our world today? What does it mean for a role? I'm sure if not one, if not all of you have gone through some kind of AI crisis-related job, thing this year. So those are all sort of viable topics, great and timely. But what I started to do is reflect on my time working in tech. It's been 25 plus years, and I thought the most powerful skill that I learned was the mental aspect, the mindset. And so I thought, let's actually just talk about the mindset, sort of embracing change, what are the rhythms we're seeing in change, because that's probably the only thing you can't control. I mean, frankly, you can gain a ton of skills and you'll do all of that, but you'll need to be in that mindset to do that. So I thought, let's just talk about some of the frameworks and rhythms I've observed during my time and how I can share some of that with you. And so it has been really critical during my time in these tech companies to be really open and being willing to shift and pivot. And so, as you know, AI is transforming our world. It is changing the industry, and we frankly don't know exactly how it's going to go. So in sort of this next part of your career, it is not going to be linear. We're not sure how it's going to be, and we can't project plan our way out of the whole thing, as us TPMs would love to do. So how do we really just embrace change and pivot when we need to? Because I bet you're gonna need to throughout this next time period. So one thing I'm going to talk about, as you know, is change is a constant. That is the one thing you know for certain. You've probably heard this a ton. And you may have remembered the days when we used to say, AI is coming. AI is the future. Well, we all know it is here now, right? And this isn't the first sort of change you've seen. Decades ago, you've heard when computer science wasn't a thing until it was a thing, right? And I was here during the time of Meta when mobile definitely wasn't a thing, and then it became a thing. You're like, oh crap, it's here. How did this happen? So, and this is not the last set of changes. And so AI is sort of this next sort of phase. And so really, the thing that I have seen with the most successful people I've worked with, and also in sort of my experiences, not us seeing the change necessarily as the sort of success, but how you respond to that change. Some of the most successful people I've seen is their response to it, not necessarily how quickly they saw it. And so I think that's why this embracing of change and how to pivot is really critical. And so that's what I'm gonna cover today. The APP framework, I call it. There's an app for that, and we're gonna cover it today. The framework, I came up with this framework as I started to think about embracing change. What does that mean? What does that look like? We all know change happens. Sometimes change happens to you, right? Like, hey, you have a new manager. Hey, there's a reorg. Hey, something is happening and you're told you got to learn a new skill. I mean, who doesn't know about performance review cycles? And so fine, you got to decide if you're going to do that. Other things that happen to you are unplanned, right? And the industry changes. And so having a framework to prepare yourself for this when the change does happen to you, or that you want to make a change, this is what I've leveraged. First is acknowledge, right? Really acknowledging there is a change, recognizing and accepting it, then planning for it, right? We know how to do the planning part, right? As TPMs, we do the plan. And then, of course, execution, right? We got to pivot, actually pivot and make the such change. And during that pivot, really adapting and then moving forward. It sounds like pretty simple and quite obvious, but if we could all do it, we'd make changes all the time. But of course, there are blockers. So we're going to cover what the blocks you from each of these steps as well. And then you can decide how you might make the such changes. And one critical thing I think as part of the APP framework is you get to have some control. Knowing that there is a change, you can decide, well, rather than have the change happening to me, I am going to take control of what is going to happen. And so that's how I hope you'll leverage this framework. So hopefully at the end of my talk, you will be able to be inspired to decide on such change you might want to make, whether it's industry-wide, career, sort of specific, or something personal. That is my hope, that you think that there's the APP framework that you can leverage. So let's cover the first step in this framework, acknowledge. Like I mentioned earlier, it might happen to you, it might sneak up on you. Either way, you gotta know it's actually happening, and then acknowledge it first, you gotta see it. Then you have to name it. Sometimes when there's a change that's happening, you want to make it, or it's happening to you. Either way, you got feelings about it. So what is that? Are you anxious about the change? Are you worried about the change? Are you nervous about the change? Are you excited? Are you welcoming? What is that? So sort of, because that is going to impact your plan. Knowing it is the thing you see, then naming it, and then decide if you want to accept it. You don't have to accept it, and that's also okay, but if you decide to, then we can execute on that next phase. So the reason I brought up this acknowledge is there was a time, a pretty big change that was happening during my time at a company, and where I realized the metrics in the product I was building wasn't doing quite well. What we realized is, wow, the web metrics are okay, the mobile metrics, like what are those? Like, why aren't people using our products? Like, we had focused primarily on building a web experience. And what I realized at the time is, it's not doing that well. Why isn't the product moving? Why is the engagement not happening? And the customers were moving from web to mobile. I didn't know that though. I didn't know this change was actually happening. And so I was limited by this lack of knowledge. And so we were in a planning room, right? The typical TPM thing you do, you're in a meeting, you look at the metrics, you do your roadmap planning, you prioritize your features and metrics, and you realize, oh, things aren't suddenly declining and not moving as you expect. Start talking to colleagues and other people, and you realize, oh crap, we're on the wrong platform. And so that sort of acknowledgement, as we sort of had the pity party amongst the team, we sort of were in the regrets, you know, sort of reflection, I mean, all the things, the emotions, you're like, how did I get here? Well, rather than focus on the how, we really wanted to focus on, and the why, right? Like all the blame and all that. We focused on the what do we need to do and to make this change, right? So previously, prioritization was just web features, and now it's like, oh God, we have to build mobile features? I mean, we didn't even have any mobile engineers on the team. So maybe the first start was to hire and grow and develop and train people on sort of the topic of how to build on mobile and join and take classes, and it kind of reminds you of where we are now with AI. But the reality is at that time, we had not acknowledged that the industry was shifting. So we did the group huddle, team camaraderie meeting. It's like, okay, team, let's all go and learn this thing. And so once we acknowledged it, we named it, we accepted it. Can't say we loved it at the time because we felt behind. We accepted it. Then we were able to build a plan and move forward on building a solution that included having mobile and web, and over time, sort of like you imagine the product did fine and the whole bit. But at that time, we just didn't know what was happening to us. And it did feel late because there are other products out in the market. So I think that's really important to acknowledge that it's happening and then go through those steps and then make a decision. With any good sort of, step, there are always blockers, right? Any product, any feature. And in this case, I want to cover some of the common blockers that might happen. It's oftentimes that it's not that you don't want to do it, but you might not realize it's happening, right? You're not aware of what's happening, which was our case. You might not like the change, right? Sometimes you might love getting a new manager, but frankly, it's often not the thing you choose. You might not want to accept the change. If there's a reorg, it's out of your control. I mean, you might need to develop a new career skill. So there are many reasons why you may not want to acknowledge and accept the change. And so in my case, where I had realized really late that mobile was here, wasn't coming, it actually had arrived, I believe it took me so long to acknowledge it, I also worried about the blame, the fear. Why hadn't I seen it? What is my team going to think of me? Why hadn't we seen this sooner? Is it too late? What can we do? I mean, we just had no idea. And so all those fears led me to take a pause and not move forward. And then what I realized is I just need to actually jump, acknowledge it, accept it, and move forward. And that big sort of unlock was really important. But at the time, without knowing that, it did limit me. And so what I do now as a strategy is, when I was working, the thing we did often was performance reviews, where we revisit how you do every half, every quarter, every year. So in my life, I do this now, whether it's using New Year's resolution or every half and during planning, I take a look and evaluate how have I done, just personal or professional, and where do I want to go? Maybe not get as far as goal setting, but just sort of reflecting and thinking about, do I need to make a change? Like, do I, in some world of the realm I'm living in, do I need to make a shift? And so taking inventory of what changes might be necessary in your life is a tactic that I use to make sure that I don't miss the sort of acknowledged step. So it could be anything, right? Like looking at my daycare schedule for my kid. Do I need to make an adjustment? Or are there things that are happening in my house that I need to sort of take inventory of? It could be any of those things. And so just making sure you have time to do that. So then the next step in APP is plan. You know, we TPMs know all about planning, right? We build a plan, make a plan. This is like how we pivot things is first we plan and figure that out. And it is really important to get a good plan out there once you've acknowledged it. And as planning goes, you might not be ready for it. That's also okay. You might know of a change, but might not be ready to move on. Not now is still a plan. You've actually made an actual decision. I'm not going to do something about it now. But when and once you are ready to make a change, and it could be anything, learning a new tech, right? Build that project plan. I think of it and treat sort of changes as something I need to actively think about. When you think about a project, you think about, why am I doing it? What am I doing? What are the outcomes? Who needs to be involved? Like all the steps, risk, dependency, I mean the whole bit. And so with change, being really thoughtful, methodical, big or small, thinking about what's included in the plan, who might help you with the plan, helps you give a little more control to the change. Because learning a new skill, pivoting in the industry, changing up the schedule in your life at home or at work, all those things, big or small, it does require some planning. So taking the time to sort of do that, I think is really important. So this happened where I needed to take this step was when I was at a company and I was working and building out a team. I was asked to take on a new role. I, at that time, supported a small team, maybe I think 6 people or so. And then I was asked to take on leading a much larger team, like a team of 20 plus people, including supporting some managers. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'll just take on supporting more people, figure it out as we go. And I did the same old things. I had my like intimate one-on-ones with every person, all their stakeholder people and partners. So that would be like 3 meetings per person. So normally it'd be like an 18-person sort of set of one-on-ones a week and deep diving on people's projects and sort of doing all the things I did to support a 6-person team. Except the problem is when you have 20 people and then so on, 1, you're in the way of the managers, and 2, it's not effective. And so I was just sort of at a loss, like I wasn't effective. And I remember thinking, I'm already not very effective. And then I have a one-on-one with a manager of mine, of which I deeply, deeply respected. She leans in, she shares this, she comes and she gives me a one-on-one, and she's like, Jenny, your lack of confidence is impacting your ability to do your job. It's not effective, and your team needs you to lead. Like, oh crap, that's definitely not the feedback I was expecting, considering I'm already a puddle on the ground, and now you're telling me I can't do this. But then she stops. Good EQ, she's trying to help me. Then she says, but I believe in you. I asked you to do this job because I know you are capable. I just need you to believe in you. Like, also not expecting that, I don't know. Like I went from what to what? And so that feedback actually changed my perspective and my career in that sense. I didn't realize I needed to do a change. I had not accepted or realized that the thing I was doing wasn't working, right? You hear this phrase, what worked for you then didn't work for you now. I was exactly in that situation. I did not know that I needed to, and looking back, right, like that I needed to change the way I was working and scale my organization. No one taught me. I hadn't learned that skill, and I just didn't know I needed to do it. I just thought, well, you know, what's a few more people? What's slightly larger? I mean, it was just not overall effective. I mean, probably more micromanaging than, you know, leading. And so I realized I needed to shift from managing to leading the team. Once I accepted that, I didn't love it. I accepted it, acknowledged it, I go, okay, well then I can build a plan for that. Because now I knew that I was flailing, someone was expecting more of me, in this case a set of people, and that if I built a plan, I probably could figure it out because I could plan my way through anything, right, as the TPM goes. So I decided to build that plan, like, you know, talk to different people. What does leading mean? I don't even know what that means because if I knew, I would be doing it. I have no idea. But I met with mentors who were leading well. I listened to podcasts. Like, I treated it like the half marathon I was training for. Like, you don't just show up and start running, right? You have a plan, you get a trainer, you hire some experts, right? So I sort of made a plan of all the things I might need to learn and do and be in order to be considered leading, along with checkpoints with my team, because now they're like the dependency, they're the feedback loop, all those things. And so suffice to say, after building that plan, I eventually made it to the other side, and I was more effective of a leader than a manager. But that sort of step of acknowledging the change was necessary, building a plan for it, then allowed me to pivot. Now, with any old good plan, there are always blockers, right? You don't know how to start. That's very common. Fear of not being the expert. That's also like, it's not that we don't want to build a plan, but sometimes you don't realize you're delaying because you don't know how to start. Maybe you're not the expert at, or you might choose wrong. I mean, sometimes we talk about this. We want to leave a job, a team, XYZ. But why don't you do it, right? The sort of leaving part seems easy, but there are so many different reasons why you might not do that. And so as you're planning, being aware that these are some of the blockers so you can work through and address them. So often, when I remember in my situation from moving from managing to leading, I definitely was not the expert. I didn't know how to lead. And so I decided to start small. I started to listen to podcasts. I knew building out a team felt like building out a company, and so I listened to this podcast called How I Built This by Guy Raz. A lot of different companies talk about how they're, you know, building products and teams and people. I listened to this book one of our colleagues shared about level 5 leadership and management, and so every time I went on a run, I'd listen to this, you know, audiobook. I sought out mentors and I chased them down and asked them tons of questions, right? Because there are definitely more experts out there than not. And so rather than be paralyzed by not starting, which was initially why I didn't know what the plan was, I started just writing things down. And the key to the plan was I was willing to pivot and adapt to changes. Right? When I learned a new thing, in this podcast, they want to do this. Well, I'm not sure I want to do that, but maybe this other thing, then met with different mentors. And the thing is, one key is I meet with different mentors and ask them the same question, and always get a different response, which is good, like diversity of thought. So then I get to choose of the things I ask them, what might I want to adopt, right? Because it's just their perspective, their lived experience. And so I often will, I recommend when you're doing a plan, it doesn't have to be the perfect plan. Once you realize you can adapt your plan, right? Do retros of your plan and adjust them. It sort of unlocks this like, it must be perfect. In the world I was at Meta, done is better than perfect. That is a quote you see often in the hallways, and that's what it really means, is sort of do not be paralyzed by these sort of blockers, but sort of make motion such that you can make some progress and get some feedback and then adjust. And so just start, right? Have time to reflect, be willing to learn and iterate. Motion definitely beats perfection if you want to make such change. The last part of APP is pivot, or what we TPMs know as execution, right? We know all about how to execute. start, adapt. I'd say this is probably the hardest part of change, right? Because you might think about a ton of things, the acknowledging is sort of, okay, this is happening, and then you build a plan for it, the stakes are still kind of low, but then when you pivot, that's when you start to see the real change happening. And so when I mentioned earlier progress over perfection, you have to be willing to just look at pivoting as just progress. You might not get to the end right away, the perfect job or perfect at that skill. I mean, we're all not going to be AI experts, after these talks, but it'll be okay because you're moving forward and making change. And I know we're change makers here because you're all in this room on a Friday at a conference listening to people talking and gaining skills. So I think that's really important to sort of leverage the momentum and inertia, and then small pivots help you restore control. So I'll give you an example. Isn't industry-wide like changing in mobile? It isn't like career, moving, which is another type of pivot. It's fairly small, the pivot I most recently had to do. So I mentioned that I'm on sabbatical. I took a break mid-June. And one of the things on my to-do list, I'm sure you all have them, when you're about to take a break, you have a to-do list, because us TPMs, we do have that. And so on my list was clean your closet. Or whatever, right? In your case, like clean your pantry, clean your, whatever it might be. Because I feel like that's a very practical, sort of tangible sort of thing to do. I've accepted it. I gotta clean my closet, right? It's overfilled, stuffed to the brim, right? I don't know why one needs 20 pairs of thermals and leggings, but it's full. And so I thought to myself, yeah, I'm gonna need to do that. It's still on my list. It's been a few months. I accepted I need the change. I even built a plan. I was like, oh, I could do that. I'll just clean all the shirts one day, all the pants another day, and we'll get there, right? Like there's like dresses another day, and I think there's this like Marie Kondo sort of, solution thing. So I'm like, I got that. Yet I still didn't pivot, if you will. I wasn't executing. I was like, my God. And I think what I realized is it just felt daunting. If I only took my own advice, like the closet is so large, there are so many drawers. I was going to be in decision paralysis. I need to decide what I'm going to do with every item, right? Like, do I keep it? Do I throw it? Do I sell it? What do I do? Do I donate it? And so I was like, wow, I have a plan. How do I get started? So, good old fashioned, like, I got to put a timeline in place. So that was a strategy that worked for me. I was going on a trip in September, and I thought, I'm going to go to Barcelona. I'm going to go shopping. I have to know what's in my closet, and I also need to know what I could buy or not buy. And these drawers were very, very full. And so I put a timeline on, and I actually built a decision framework. It's like, if it fits, great, you can put it away. If you love it and it doesn't fit, you could still keep it. If you're not sure what to do with it, you have an indecision box, right? Like I just sort of gave myself some sort of outs. And if I wasn't really sure and some other combination, you could do whatever. It's like, all right, fine. I already sort of now have an idea with all my boxes sort of lined up. Just bloody get started. So I finally was like, all right. And I gave myself permission to not finish, but just get started. So I started, filled out, cleaned it up, and I hurt myself in the process, but I finished it. I was like, wow, this whole lifting and moving this arm up over here, it's a motion that you shouldn't repeat 1,000 times. But I cleaned every drawer, every rung and every hanger, and I realized at the end of it, my God, I have a nice set of clothes. I really do not need to buy more new things. Like, I found a ton of things in there, and I felt a lot lighter. So the pivot, as you can imagine, has blockers, right? Fear of the outcome, fear of the unknown, doubt in your ability to be able to do it, waiting for the perfect time because there's no really perfect time to clean your closet because you're not really behind by anything, right? You're only accountable to yourself. And so for me, some of the strategies I use is have an accountability buddy, like say it out loud. I kept telling my sisters, I'm going to clean my closet. I'm going to donate these clothes when it's ready, because usually I give them the things and they can go do whatever with them. So they're kind of expecting me to bring some things when we see each other in Barcelona. It's like, oh my God, I have a deadline I just created, right? Say it out loud. And so what I realized in my particular case, the big blocker for me was the shame of it all. I was worried about being able to fit into the clothing, and then the judgment of myself, the guilt of it, the nostalgia of the clothing. There were all these sort of emotional things. Like, other than cleaning the closet, I had to decide, I had to try everything on, see if it really fits. What if it was too big or too small? What if I loved it, it didn't fit? I mean, there was all these emotions related to decision making, and there was a lot of decisions to make. And so I just put out like risk management, right? Indecision box, I don't have to decide now. Gave myself permission to not finish it. You can mission abort if you're not ready. You can move to a different drawer if you so choose. You can keep all 20 thermals if you need them because it's cold in California, right? Like, I just gave myself permission to let go and just get started. So progress, right, over perfection. Just start. The pivots matter. Small, big, successful. So whether you're cleaning your closet, whether you're making a career move, gaining a skill, being intentional about those pivots are really important. So are we ready to use the APP framework? Right? Like, there's a lot that we can learn and be and do, and it's not that we don't want to change, but keep in mind that you have to start with acknowledging it, then building the plan for it with intention, and making those pivots. Because we are in a time, at this point in our industry, where things are changing and you'd like some control. I can tell you that there are not AI experts, but if you haven't started a ton, you're not going to get there. You're not going to be the expert. So who are the people that you can watch and listen to? What are the podcasts? What are the books? Like, what are the things? And it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get started. So I'm about to close. So of course, with every TPM event, there are action items, right? So we're gonna do that. Reflection. Just take a moment. I love for people to stand up if there's a change you wanna make, big or small, any change. Have a moment, think about it. Is there a change you wanna make? You don't have to make it. Just, is there a change you can think about that you wanna make? Stand up if you have a change. Have a think. I mean, you clear a closet, change some shoes in the drawer, I mean, whatever, like if there's a change. And if you look around this room, there are a lot of you that want to make a change of something. And it doesn't have to be like monumental. So I think that part is important. So I know we're almost close to time. It would be great if you talk to or mention to a partner or write it down. I'm here if there is a change you want to make, because I mentioned accountability buddy, or at least saying it out loud. So you don't have to share the change if you're not comfortable, but if there's some change you want to make, tell someone in your table or write it down. That's an action item, right? Like, there is a change, and then you can have a seat. But I think it is important to make note of a change you want to make, and then decide if you want to use the framework. All right. And with that, change is your only constant, right? Acknowledge, plan, and pivot. You've got an app for that now. And every shift is an evolution. So thank you very much.
All right, this was amazing, Jenny, the app framework. I'm going to share my change, but I'm thinking, should I not? Okay, but AI definitely is a part of the plan. So we're ready to opening up for questions. For in-person, we have Lisa and Anton helping out, and we'll take questions on remote. So floor is yours.
We'll have, I think, about 10 minutes. If there are any questions you might have about this framework in general, you can ask. If no questions, we will end early. Can't imagine you have no questions. Oh, yes, there's a question right here.
You mentioned a couple...
Maybe introduce yourself.
Oh, hi, my name is Rebecca.
Yes.
I work in Intuit. And you mentioned when you were developing your leadership skills, you found resources, and you mentioned a couple, and I was wondering if there were a couple more that you found very valuable that you could share.
What at the time, I felt like the organization I was at was really resourced in lots of mentors and people. So what I did was I saw some leaders that I really respected. So there was that. I went and spoke to each of those, asked them questions about that, and I observed how they were leading and different leadership styles. Some I loved and some I didn't. And then I listened to different podcasts. So the one I mentioned is the How I Built Guy Raz, Level 5 Leadership. I would just consume podcasts and books like that people would mention. We also had like people who wrote books internally at the company. So I would read that. I also listened to a lot of Brene Brown and sort of Dare to Lead, all those things. And so it depends on where you are in that phase of leadership for the sort of appropriate sort of thing. And so that's what I ended up doing. And so if I listened to a podcast and they mentioned a thing, I would then go and chase that other thing because I just didn't know where to go initially. So I just read a bunch of books. And so I remember the Level 5 Leadership one. I can't remember the exact author. It was just really good to compare sort of old companies, new companies, and different leadership styles. Because I needed to also choose what kind of style leader I wanted to be. I realized in these talks that there are styles and how you might want to go about that, formal, sort of casual, and I myself am sort of, informal. And so how do you be authentic, transparent, but also serious? So I'd recommend if there are people that you see on LinkedIn or at your company that you find strong in leadership, sort of go down sort of that path, because not everything is learned in books. I think you need some of that for foundation, right? Just like when we study, there are foundational sort of like things in that case. But outside of that, I think the sort of people part meant a lot to me as well. Oh, the question there.
Thanks, Jenny. It was very inspirational. My name is Shubha. I'm with HashiCorp as a TPM. My question to you is, you said you got the advice from your manager, your leader, saying that you need to change. So she was watching you and then gave you the advice. So it's really great that you got the advice and you were able to change. So my question to you is that how often do you give advices to your members? Like, is it only during the review cycle, or do you watch them? Like, do you have a cycle where you really give advices to your team members to change when you observe you want them to change?
Oh, yes. How often do I give advice? Well, definitely during review time, right? People expect it. But I think when I see there's an opportunity, I see it, I'll say something. I'll do that with a team of which I built really high trust with, right? I've heard someone say feedback is as good as the relationship. So I make a point to have a close-knit enough relationship with people on my team that if there was something that did not go well in some session or whatnot, that I'm able to tell the person almost immediately or within sort of the time frame and mindset that I believe they could receive that, right? Because the detriment would be to them if they either did poorly in some scrum meeting or some like prioritization roadmap meeting that had gone down, or interactions, right, in some connection building activity, what that might be. So I don't usually try to wait or hold off for specific sort of cycles, maybe at a one-on-one time. But I do know that some companies are much more structured in delivery timeframes, so you have to sort of figure out what works for your culture of the company. I've also heard people only give feedback sometimes when they're asked. That wasn't the case for the companies I was at. So I would just sort of take steer from the environment that you're in and the people that you're with, right? Because I don't think that people always are ready to receive feedback. I think you also need to be in that mindset. I often say that feedback is a gift, but you don't always have to keep on giving, and some days you just don't feel like receiving. So it's okay. So I would sort of take steer from the situation.
We have a question from Vancouver, from Vinit. Jenny, what helped you with your transition from IC to people leader? Any recommended method or process?
I feel like that was also a very big transition, similar to managing to leading. First of all, it's a whole different job. I think like why you want to manage, understanding sort of the reason for doing it, because I think old days it used to be sort of prestige when you manage a team, but now senior IC is like a thing, and I think it's great. So figuring out why you want to manage versus doing IC. And if you think about the IC to manager track, your whole career is being an IC. starting from when you graduate school and you're doing different things, but typically you're ICing for whatever time period. Then you scoot over to managing. You typically have not been practicing this for the whole time you graduated. So the amount of experience you have to manage is very little relative to being an IC. So I think just sort of knowing and accepting that is a huge change. Just because it's sort of in many companies, a quote unquote lateral move, you don't have the built-on experience. And so I think that is where I would spend the time figuring out how to actually manage a team and figure out how to support a set of people and what is your leadership style, because you have not been spending, whatever time period you had been since you graduated from being an IC to being a manager. So I take that sort of transition quite seriously, and then do the sort of same things I mentioned: build a plan, how to manage versus scaling a team. Good question.
Thank you, Jenny. Now it's the turn of the audience. Is there more questions here?
Oh, there's two over there.
Hi, my name is Amrita. I am Cloud Engineering Infra TPM at United Airlines. My question is, can you provide guidelines or guidance on how to take this framework with your team or stakeholders? Because you can be proactive with acknowledging the change and planning it, but what are the effective ways to take your team through it?
Yeah, it was like the time I try to get people to sprint plan with story points, and they're like, what are you talking about? I think it depends on where your team is at. So the team I was at when we were trying to move from web to mobile, what I realized is you don't need to tell them the whole framework, because sometimes it's nicer to just sort of take people through the thing. And so what is it that you feel your team needs to acknowledge? If your team is sort of willing and ready to sort of make a change, you could introduce this framework and sort of share it with them. I just came up with this framework because I realized the pattern, and I thought I'd share it with you guys. You could tell me how it goes. But I do think getting the team to acknowledge that there is a change that must happen, and how can you or the team play a role, whether it be in the sort of acceptance or in the planning of it or in the pivot, right? Because people can have different roles in applying this, right? Because I think building a plan with your team is equally as important, but if they're not ready to do it, it's going to be difficult. And then to make the shift. So you could very much just walk people through sort of the process as you're going through it, or you can assign sort of people to take on the different steps, right, for accountability. But when people are not ready for a change, I think no matter how much you sort of try to drag them through, it's very, very difficult. I think you hear the saying, you could get a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink, right? So they first need to realize they're thirsty. They want to drink the thing and then move on. So I think that sort of figuring out where your team is at, and then finding a window to sort of like insert this sort of framework could be useful.